So let's watch Vaush talking about the CIA. I wonder if he's going to be like, oh no, it's obviously bad that CIA agents are being killed before they can destabilize their countries and do regime change for the USA.
Captured, killed, or compromised, CIA admits to losing dozens of informants. Counterintelligence officials said in a top-secret cable to all stations and bases around the world that too many of the people it recruits from other countries to spy for the US are being lost.
Good.
So, yeah, these are my friends, you guys. So
it is objectively good that people who are enabling future genocides, future regime change, future mass sell-offs of their national resources, etc., are being dealt with. Objectively based. You know, it's one thing to, like, be against the Iranian regime. It's another thing to join the fucking US to try and destabilize your government and achieve US foreign policy goals, which invariably include the complete destruction of your country. So this is based.
Keep in mind that the informants that are being killed here aren't CIA agents. They're the people the CIA agents approach to...
Oh, there's a huge moral difference here, right? Like, if you're not directly employed by the CIA, but you knowingly work for the CIA, just not as a direct employee, that's so different, right?
To form contacts in these, to recruit them essentially. So these contacts are essentially civilians working for the CIA.
The CIA are civilians too, so
within their own countries, not working.
CIA agents and CIA assets are combatants. Simple fact.
For necessary, yeah. You know, I imagine the particular circumstances here vary significantly. Depending on the actual situation. And because we're dealing with literal intelligence agencies, we aren't going to know everything here. We can only work with the information we're provided. But what happened was that counterintelligence officials in the USA warned the CIA all over the world about the number of informants that were being killed in other countries. I think most notably China and Iran. The message in an unusual top-secret cable said that the CIA's Counterintelligence Mission Center had looked at dozens of cases in the last several years involving foreign informants who had been killed, arrested, or most likely compromised. Although brief, the cable laid out the specific number of agents executed by rival intelligence agencies, a closely held detail that counterintelligence officials typically do not share in such cables. This isn't being an informant already like the most dangerous job possible? Yeah.
Guys, I can't believe that fucking China and Iran are, like, executing people for a crime that is punishable by death in every single country in the world, basically. This is truly insane.
In years, adversarial intelligence agencies in countries like Russia, China, and Iran, and Pakistan have been hunting down the CIA sources and in some cases turning them into
communism is based.
Yikers. Acknowledging that recruiting spies is a high-risk business, the cable raised issues that have plagued the agency in recent years, including poor tradecraft, being too trusting of sources, underestimating foreign intel agencies, and moving too quickly. Not a great track record on the CIA, okay? If they're doing stuff in your country, I don't know. It's just probably not good. Historically, it's just probably not good. It's, now, I'm generalizing a little bit. Probably if I look through the CIA's history, I could find maybe some instances where they've done something good.
Oh my god. You know, you gotta at least give the CIA some credit for doing something good, right? They've definitely done good things ever.
I'm being charitable. I'd say the overwhelming majority of what the CIA does is pretty directly harmful. Usually what they do...
Like, can you imagine him saying something like that, like, for the KGB or for, like, China's intelligence agency? Like, he has to clarify that because he knows that he has viewers who, like, are incredibly indoctrinated with American exceptionalism and who love the CIA.
Is they facilitate coups in foreign countries so that their leaders are more amenable to American business interests. That's like the main job of the CIA. Like, that's like the main thing they've done, you know? Yeah, they make the rest of the world amicable to capitalism. They have done that, but that's not most of what they do. But it's the most consequential of what they do to the lives of other people, no? A coup in another country, this affects millions and millions of people.
Imagine him connecting the dots through what he's saying here and through his, like, completely rabid and irrational assertions that basically, like, China is the world's greatest evil that must be dealt with. Imagine him connecting that with this. Take what he says here and put it together with anything that he's ever said about China, and then let's see if he can unironically try to argue that China is anywhere near as bad as the US. Like, how could you admit this and then try to argue that China is worse? It's nonsensical. He basically just says whatever's convenient for the topic at the time without connecting it at all with what else he actually claims to think or opine about things. Like, right now, it's convenient for him to say that the CIA is bad, right? Because that's what the topic is. But if he was in a debate with someone like about whether the US is worse than China, he would willingly take up the position that China is way worse and just completely forget about everything that he's saying here. That's what he's like.
Turns an entire nation.
That's
I'm sure they
debate
do lots of
broism.
work that isn't that, but that's definitely, well, that's the highlight of their career. I'd say that much. China does the same shit, dipshit. Are you okay?
China does the same shit. Let's see his response to that. If he will push back on that at all, because it's not true. You can't name a single coup backed by Chinese intelligence in the last 40 years. You can't. They don't exist.
If you want, you can go watch the dozens of videos in my catalog where I'm very obviously directly anti-China, in case you were curious.
It's not the same thing. You know, I am anti-China, right? But I'm not going to go around and equivocate between the fucking CIA and Chinese intelligence. It's not the same thing. They're not equally bad. They don't equally fuck up the world. Not even close. Like what's the worst thing that we can say that Chinese intelligence have done? Like hacking like American companies, for example, and like having agents in adversary countries like the US, Australia, etc. That's just everyday espionage. It's the same thing as sort of like, supporting coups, right? Not even remotely the same thing. Especially because, what we're talking about here is US agents in these countries being found. The US does the same thing with Chinese intelligence in the US. European intelligence agencies do the same thing with Chinese agents in Europe. It's not the same thing as like literally, essentially like backing fucking violent coups and shit like that.
What a day we've arrived at, huh? When leftists can't criticize the CIA anymore. Oh wait, they weren't directing it towards me. Wait, really? Not directed towards you? Oh no, they're in all caps. No, they're spamming not directed towards you. Well, that was a little ambiguous. Oh, I see. Everyone apologized to Black Spinal in chat.
Everyone apologize. Like, he's like so fucking desperate, right? To equivocate here. Like, he's so apologetic to these fucking morons in his chat. He has to create some sort of equivalence or even like pretend that China is worse than the US. He absolutely cannot abide by anything less. He's so sensitive to that fact too. Like, he knows that's where the money is, right? The money is in like confirming the American exceptionalism of his audience. They cannot be allowed to believe that the US is uniquely bad. They have to believe that, it's just sort of like a rational actor in global politics. Like an everyday rational actor that just does what every other country does. Nothing worse.
Now, moving on. CIA bad. Now, here's the point where I introduce that bit of nuance that lefties never seem to, but I think
he's going to introduce the nuance. CIA bad, but CIA agents. This is what I'm predicting. Let's see if that's correct, okay? If it's not correct, I'm going to edit that out of the fucking clip, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to openly lie to make myself look better by editing. What are you going to do about it, huh? Nothing. You can't do shit. So what he's going to say here is like, I'm going to introduce a bit of nuance here, okay? Sure, the CIA is bad, but these people are victims of circumstance or some shit like that. And it's bad that they're being taken out. They're not being allowed to help the CIA foment fucking coups and genocide in their country.
Other countries also have intelligence agencies.
Oh no, he's doing like an equivalence. Of course.
A lot of them also do a lot of really bad shit with them.
Okay,
Russia
like what?
has an incredibly sophisticated global counter intel and cyber warfare enterprise. It devotes a lot of time and attention towards its efforts to make adjacent countries more conservative. Putin is bad, China does this as well. Now,
Where's like the Russian coup? Right, you can point to like the invasion of the Crimea, but that wasn't specifically like an intelligence operation, right? That was an invasion, like an irredentist sort of on-the-ground invasion. Where's, like, Russia sending their intelligence agents to, like, I don't know, fucking Guatemala or the Philippines or something to foment a coup? Show me that.
I'm not fully educated on the history of China's,
like Russian hackers, like, hacking American businesses or, like, Australian intelligence agencies or government databases or whatever. Let's say that happens. How is that comparable to fucking coups and stuff?
Foreign operations with regards to intelligence agencies. But it is as a general rule, if you are anarchist leaning, to recognize that statecraft is messy business. And any state is invariably going to create intelligence agencies, which will ensure its own interests.
Somehow, even the other great powers managed to not get their intelligence agencies involved in overthrowing governments on the other side of the world constantly, and like rigging elections and stuff like that constantly. Somehow they don't do that. Like he's essentially rationalizing it through, it's just sort of natural, right? There's no moral aspect here. It's just something that sort of naturally occurs. But clearly other states actually take a different approach, China especially. The USA has a very uniquely US direct interventionist approach.
And let me tell you guys, if the way in which they wanted to ensure their own interests was clean and popular, they do it through legislation. If it was not so clean and not so popular, they do it through spies.
And the US is by far the one who does that the most to other countries in ways that other great powers don't. But he has to equivocate directly. Is there going to be a but here? Maybe I'm being uncharitable. Maybe there's going to be a but here. Let's see.
That's how things have been for ages and ages and ages. And that's going to be the case no matter what country you're dealing with, okay?
Now, no, it's not. Not even close.
America, of course, has had the most global influence for a long time. So in terms of just raw power, we outpace these other countries. Though I feel like by this point, Russia and China combined probably pose more of a... I feel like at this point, between the two of them, they have to outpace us in terms of the total like power and influence of their... I'm speculating. Let's get to the point. The point that I'm trying to get at right now is that this is something that all countries do to some extent or another. And additionally, I also think that nations need intelligence agencies, because to deny a nation an intelligence...
He's talking about like the fucking right of nations to have an intelligence agency now. We need like a universal charter of the right of nations to have to have a fucking secret police, to have a spy agency. The fundamental right of a nation to have an intelligence agency now.
Intelligence agency is to ensure its downfall. If you say
I mean, the US didn't even have a non-military intelligence agency until World War II. They're not a core part at all. Most countries only developed them like within the last 60, 70 years. And it's not a natural part of a fucking nation state. Nor do nation states have rights.
You think no nation should have...
it's one thing to say that it's normal because most, or at least a lot of countries do have intelligence agencies. It's another to frame it like as if states have rights or something. Like the right to have secret police.
Have an intelligence agency of any kind. You're essentially saying, I want to put a timer on the existence of this nation until it collapses due to foreign interference. There are certainly better and worse ways to do those types of things, but it seems like
it just seems to have completely moved on from the point of the comparison. Like he basically, he never added in a but there. He left it at basically saying that, the US, China, Russia, these countries are equally bad on the international stage. There's no difference between them. And he even added a caveat at the end saying that the only reason why the US it might have been worse is because it had more power. As if there's no difference in the practices between these countries. As if China, is equally direct in its interference, is equally violent in its interference, rather than using far softer power than the US, which goes for the direct coup, the direct election interference, etc., constantly. Like, he's trying to frame it like the reason why China does that, basically without explicitly saying it, is because they have less power than the US, but China could do that a million fucking times over. They're more than powerful enough to spur coups in other countries if they wanted to. They don't do it clearly because they don't want to. They clearly don't think that would be a productive way to gain influence. While the US, well, they clearly still do. Not even to mention the fucking wars, which the CIA is certainly involved in, but not like the main driver of. You can acknowledge that both China and the US are imperialism, but we're certainly not talking about equally destructive methods of imperialism. At least in terms of directly spurring violence or directly interfering in the political process, etc.
It's just naturally. And by the way, I think that would be the case under socialism too. Like, you're advocating for war? No, I'm not. In fact, the absence of a cybersecurity, an intel agency, respectively, imbalance.
Yeah, I mean, the framing of Russia as an important global power is far overblown. It's a poor country. It's a poor country that does invest a disproportionate amount into its military and its intelligence and its geopolitics, etc. Maybe Russia wants to be like the USA, but it can't be. China, though, not even close. You can't say that at all. China has the capacity to do tons of shit. Where is it? Where's the Chinese coup? Where's the Chinese election meddling? Show me it. It's not there. There's no equivalence to it in the CIA.
The relative degree of geopolitical power in a way that makes war more likely. After all, who fights each other more often? America and piddly third world countries, or America and like the UK or China? Not directly, at least, not for a long time. The larger countries are, the more they can defend themselves, the less likely America is to directly interfere in their business. That's obviously very variable, very contextual. The point that I'm trying to get at is that I do think there's work that intel agencies kind of have to do if there are different countries in the world at all. And even if there was...
It's fucking weird to like have some guy call himself an anarchist and then 2 minutes later start talking about the states' rights to intelligence agencies. It's just so bizarre. For one, the concept of nations having rights is utterly hilarious, especially coming from an anarchist. It's like the sort of Israel has a right to exist. That's, you have to have like a massive liberal brain to ever say anything remotely like that. States' rights to an intelligence agency. Like, not states' rights to, like, sovereignty, or not states' rights to self-determination, states' rights to an intelligence agency. That is bizarre, man.
Just one world government, there would probably be some kind of secret operative agency that would do work that the police couldn't. There's always work that can only be done through secrecy. That is just always the case. Now, the CIA, so my position then is that it is possible to defensively orchestrate an intel agency. Now, if my position on that is like right over here, the CIA is somewhere over into that hallway, okay? If we're talking about how far away the CIA is from an acceptable invocation of that particular baseline standard for intel agencies.
So is he gonna like take him, you know, the standard that he's applying here and compare the CIA to the enemy countries that he always shits on? Probably not. Maybe he'll finally get around to it. You know, I'm giving him some, like I'm being charitable to the Vaush here, to the Vaush. I'm being very charitable here. I'm assuming that he's going to follow this up by also comparing the CIA to the evil enemy, Yellow Peril, China. Let's see.
Do not interpret what I am saying as a defense of the CIA. Only that as an institution, I understand this to be a universal and almost inevitable product of statecraft. So with all of that said, was that too much nuance? Will I get clipped for that? I feel like that was a pretty agreeable set of positions.
Nuance. Like, it's really weird to me how these, like, very unread sort of liberals who at most skim a Wikipedia page every now and again think that nuance is basically conceding ground to liberalism and conceding ground to liberal framing. Right? Like, what his injection of nuance there was essentially adopting like a completely sort of liberal conception of the world and saying like, these are the way that things are, you know, this is the way that the dominant ideology sort of use these sorts of things. Like, you know, it's natural that a state is going to have an intelligence agency, therefore it's justified. Right? That's like the sort of thing that a liberal would say, right? Like, a liberal believes in a world that is divided into a bunch of nation states with set borders. You know, and each of those nation states is run by a sovereign government with sovereignty over its territory and sovereignty over its way of like choosing how to interact with other countries, blah, 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 the liberal international order. And Vaush's way of injecting nuance is to just completely abandon any auspice of socialism, anarchism, communism, whatever, and just cede all of his ground to liberalism. For him, that's what nuance means. Nuance means just abandoning your purported values completely. And if there is a better encapsulation of like this sort of political streaming and most of the people who are involved and popular in it than that really just shows what most of the people involved in it are like. They try to frame themselves as being a lot more radical than they actually are, but when push comes to shove, they're not going to actually defend the radical position ever. They're going to just cede all of their ground into a sort of hegemonic status quo liberal sort of framing and then act like that's being nuanced. That's not being nuanced, dude. That's just not upholding your purported beliefs, not analyzing things through the framework that you claim to analyze things through at all. That's liberalism for you. That's a liberal analysis of geopolitics.
You
know, it's one thing to say like, this is the way that things are, and you know, it shouldn't be this way and we should work to change it, but this is the way that things are. And it's another thing to frame states having a fucking intelligence agency as some sort of right, something that's justified by like the divine right of states to have an intelligence agency. It's absurd. That's not nuance. That's liberalism.
The CIA is sad because people are dying, and the rest of this is a little bit more fucking boring. I do want to talk a little bit, though, about some of the behavior that I'm seeing on social media.
He's gonna be like, oh my god, I can't believe people are celebrating the deaths of fucking CIA assets working towards regime change in their country.
A little weird about the foreign operatives' deaths being celebrated. That's a little bit odd to me, I think. A lot of people think that their Western perspective on the world is universal. So when they think CIA, the only thing they think is horrible, institution.
Does he think that people in the rest of the world love the fucking CIA? Does he think that people in the West don't love the CIA? What is he talking about? This is opposite fucking day. It's time to defend the CIA, boys.
That like undermines human rights and overthrows governments all over the place. And that's what the CIA is and does. But oftentimes the people in these countries who are recruited by the CIA are in positions where to them the CIA seem as saviors.
Oh, if the CIA manages to find a fucking fascist, who sees the US as their ally in the struggle against socialism or whatever, random buzzword you might find that the US uses to justify its interventions, that makes it okay. If they think it's justified, that makes it okay. When the CIA gave a fucking gun to a Chilean fascist and told them to go and kidnap one of Allende's top generals. Like when they did that, right? It was okay because the guy who they gave the gun to and who ended up killing that general, he truly believed that he was doing a good thing. He truly believed that the USA represented his freedom and would help him to make Chile a better place. Therefore, it's really weird to celebrate. Or it would have been really weird to celebrate if he was killed. It would have been so weird. He thought that he was doing something that was good. Ergo, it's just so weird.
So, like, let me give you an example, right? If you're like an agitator in Iran because you oppose the theocratic autocracy, and like your approach saying that like your work can help destabilize the government that you know is tyrannical.
That's not the same fucking thing. If you are someone in Iran who is against your government, you don't fucking join the USA, which is explicitly not gonna do anything that's within your interest, unless your interest is essentially to install, whatever random like dictatorship the USA decides to install, that will then coincidentally work to privatize every national resource, completely change your country's geopolitical relations, do everything possible to open your country to US capital, with absolutely no regard for your own people. It's justified because you're against the government of your own country. Like, this logic is absurd, right? Like, it would be like saying that it would be justified to spy for the fucking Nazis or something during World War II because you were against the US government. Would it have been okay for, say, like a black person to have spied against the US government in World War II? Because, yeah, sure, the Nazis were evil and racist, but they were evil and racist on the other side of the world, right? You were being oppressed by your own less evil and racist, but still evil and racist government. So from your perspective, you're being oppressed, therefore it would have been justified to spy for the fucking Nazis? No! Such a dumb argument.
I gotta say, I don't know if I can blame these informants necessarily. Now, I don't know the specific instances with all of them, and we'll never know. They're dead. And also, this is literally intel agency work. It's very unlikely we'll ever understand any of the nuance here. I'm only saying that
there's always nuance. There always has to be nuance, and then the nuance that he injects isn't nuance at all. It's just the hegemonic status quo sort of perspective. That's the nuance. Like, Vaush injecting nuance is like the average CNN analyst talking about something. It's indistinguishable.
The people who are celebrating the death of the informants should probably redirect their feelings a little bit of spite towards the feds. Like, wouldn't that be a little...
These people are feds. What do you think they are? They're literal CIA assets. They're paid by the CIA to conduct espionage and destabilize their own government in the name of US capital. Everything about that makes them feds.
But better? You know what I mean? Like, because we don't know really what motivated the informants. I imagine a lot of them are really shitty people, and I imagine that at least some of them were just desperate and looking for some way to corroborate information in a way that might lead to positive political change.
Look, I don't fucking care if you think that you're doing something good in collaborating with the CIA. If you collaborate with the CIA, you become a combatant immediately. And whatever happens to you, you can't complain about. Deal with it.
If you want to be really spiteful about this, why not?
Can you imagine this guy saying this about a KGB agent or something? Absolutely not. Unimaginable. He's only saying it because it's the USA.
Be spiteful about the obvious shit in the room here. The intercepted cable from the CIA literally says that they feel the CIA might have underestimated foreign intel agencies and risked the safety of their operatives.
Damn, man, if the CIA is sorry about it, that means that we need to be sorry too. I guess that's how it works.
Like, if you're going to direct your antagonism one way or another, why would you not impugn the incompetence of the CIA? Isn't that what should be made fun of here? Like, that to me seems like the thing. It's the fucking CIA. Do you have any idea what the CIA... Now, if the CIA was really on the tippy toes, Do you have any idea what they should be able to do? The United States has essentially unparalleled geopolitical power. The CIA should have an unimaginable amount of power and influence when it comes to getting done what they want to get done. And now they're bitching and moaning that their incompetence led to other people getting killed. Why are people not making fun of the CIA for this?
People are making fun of the CIA. The agents who got killed here are part of the CIA. What do you not understand? Does he think, like, you know, if you're essentially a contractor for the CIA, that, like, you're not, like, a part of the CIA? That's not how this works. The way that the CIA functions is through assets. Without them, it literally wouldn't be able to do anything. The way that the CIA works is essentially they have agents, actual agents, for example, and they're the ones who conduct these sorts of operations through assets. You're never going to see a CIA agent, like, literally an actual agent on the fucking ground with a gun in his hand, shooting the president of a country. It's always someone who they're working with. I don't know how he thinks that this works. He tries to frame himself as, like, being nuanced, right? Like, he starts out framing himself like he has the leftist position, and then he gradually works himself into the liberal position, or, like, a more, like, sort of apologetic position. And then he, like, he started out saying the CIA was terrible and, like, you know, basically unjustifiable. And since starting out, over the last, like, 12 minutes since then, he's gradually ceded more and more ground to the liberal position, to the point that he's essentially just arguing a completely liberal stance. Like, he's adopted liberalism as his own opinion for the sake of injecting nuance.
When I look at social media, all the leftists are like, good, I'm glad the informants are dead. But that seems to me like a misdirection a little bit. You could be attacking a more juicy, ripe target just like that, you know?
What a dumb thing to complain. He didn't even really elaborate on why it's a bad thing.
This isn't the first time the CIA has demonstrated incompetence. Yeah, it definitely is not. Not even close. Doesn't look good to normies either. Yeah, that's true. Guys,
I don't give a shit what some guy who venerates the CIA thinks about the deaths of CIA assets.
Let's imagine you're a liberal, okay? And you see a leftist on Twitter, all right?
You got to think about the optics. Says the guy who defended child porn multiple times and who thinks that using a tactical N-word, like using a tactical N-word, is a good thing. Talking about fucking optics all the time. And whenever he talks about optics, right, it's like essentially talking to liberals as if everything that they say is correct. This guy is a liberal. Everything he does is liberalism. And I'm not just saying that. I've explained over the course of this analysis why he's a liberal and how he sort of, like, seeks himself into a just overtly liberal analysis.
Which of these do you think you'll find more compelling as like a sales package for our ideology? In one of them, the leftists are celebrating authoritarian regimes extrajudicially executing people because they were recruited by the CIA. And
I'm sure that if these people were not just, like, arrested, that they wouldn't be judicially proven to be spies, right? That these people who the CIA admits are their spies are just being unjustly executed. The CIA admits that they are their assets, right? I guarantee you that in China, Iran, whatever country, high treason, which is what this is punishable by death. Espionage for the enemy. These sorts of crimes, in a lot of countries, this is actually the only crime that is still carries the death penalty. In many countries that have otherwise completely abolished the death penalty, I'm 100% sure that these people would have been convicted, especially given the fact that the CIA is not saying that people who aren't assets are being caught up in this and being killed, rather just people who are confirmed assets that they admit to.
in the other one, leftists are attacking the CIA because their incompetence not only hurt themselves, but also hurt the informants that they, got killed.
So if we convince liberals that the CIA is incompetent, does he think that's going to make people think the CIA is bad, rather than that the CIA needs more funding and needs to be better at, like, destroying the world? For the sake of optics, we need to start arguing that the CIA is incompetent so that liberals can then start thinking, yeah, that's a good point. We need a better CIA. That makes so much sense, man. The problem with the US military is that it doesn't do its invasions good enough. The US military invasion of Afghanistan would have been so awesome if only it had succeeded. Oh man, that would have been awesome, If only, the US invaded Iraq, didn't find the WMDs, but then somehow, magically, they managed to crush the insurgency. Everything would have been fine and dandy. There wouldn't have been anything morally wrong about that at all. Nothing wrong with the massive fucking destruction that they caused in the course of the invasion and war. Nothing wrong with that. It's all about the incompetence. This is this entire fucking video, him analyzing this sort of thing and trying to inject nuance, trying to appeal to liberals, just turns him into a liberal. If you want to convince liberals that they're wrong, you need to get them to question their framework, the very way that they look at the world and that they interpret these things. You don't just, you can't adopt their framework, because you're going to lose every single time. You adopt their framework, like you're essentially ceding all of your ground to them immediately.
To me, the latter one feels like it's a much better sell and is also more responsible and more accurate and more pointed and just generally affords better political discourse. But that's just on me. Anyway, that's my only opinion on this. In conclusion, in summary, CIA bad. CIA bad.
CIA bad, but could we please have some more respect for the CIA agents taken out? Could we please salute them? Could we please give them a
CIA
burial
bad.
with full military honors?
Very, very good.